And we want to welcome everybody to a special episode of RELICS Radio tonight. We're celebrating Independence Day here in America, July the 4th. And we got the whole gang here, but we're going to have a shorter show tonight, no commercials. In a moment, we're going to have a very special guest that we're going to bring on that has a very special announcement to make. But you know, whenever and by the way, hope that you are having a great 4th, you and your family, and that you'll stay safe. But when we think back to those men that gathered in Independence Hall on July the 4th of 1776 in Philadelphia, the government looked at those men as criminals, as committing high treason. That's what they were doing whenever they signed this declaration. And had we lost that war, they would have been hanged, beheaded, drawn, and quartered, and even worse. So we tip our hats today to the freedom that we enjoy to these men who did what was considered wrong in order to do what they knew was right. So again, hope that you have a wonderful 4th of July. And I'm celebrating right now with my family. We're on the houseboat, and we're right out in the middle of Dell Hollow. So as long as the generator keeps running and we don't run out of gas, the show will continue. What about you, Jeff? How are you and your family spending July the 4th?
Well, I just come in, and I left them out there with the fireworks, so hopefully they don't blow nothing up. But it's been a hot one, buddy. It's been real hot.
I tell you, it really has. Really has.
I had the grill going and cooked some steaks and hamburgers, and the whole family's doing good.
And we got the whole gang in here tonight. This is a special show, isn't it, Jeff?
It really is. We've got a half redneck with us. How's it going, Mark?
Hey guys, happy 4th of July to you. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here tonight with everybody, and happy 4th to everybody else. Man, you know, it is hot down here in Florida, and I'm doing everything I can not to burn up my neighbor's house with all the fireworks.
Or bouncy house.
Or kids' bouncy houses. You know, speaking of 4th of July, you know, we also celebrated this week Canada Day. And they celebrated that on Monday, July 1st. And, I think I've told you this before, but I think I'm really Canadian. You know, I think what happened was I think my mother snuck over the border. And I was born in Texas, but I think I'm really Canadian because I really love Canada as a country and all the people from Canada. And I'm actually very pleased to announce that our guest tonight is from Canada. And maybe we ought to just go ahead and bring him on. But first of all, let me just tell you a little bit about him. He's a well-known dive detectorist. He's a ring finder. He's an author. He's a wonderful speaker. I consider him a friend. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve Zazulyk, our guest for tonight.
Hey, welcome
Hello,
to the
Mark.
Hey, welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you very much, you guys. I really appreciate that. And I want to wish you and all of our listeners happy 4th of July. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's a hot time here in America, no doubt about it. But you've got a very special announcement that you want to make here on the show tonight, don't you?
I do, and I just want to start off by saying I just appreciate you guys so much inviting me on the podcast, Jeff Loy and my good friend Mr. Hoover down in Florida. You guys are all such wonderful supporters of myself, and my new book, The Ring Finder, is coming out. Pre-sale is July 5th, and the actual print publication date is July 23rd, and I'm just super excited about it. I've got some really, really good feedback on it already, and this is really one of the first podcasts to announce it.
So we can't wait to read the book. I mean, and when did you say that we can buy this book?
You can. It's really interesting. When you're dealing with Amazon, So, but anyways, you can pre-buy it on July 5th, and you can. It will actually be in publication on July 23rd.
Okay. So through your adventures, that of course everyone knows you go on quite a few adventures. And when did you decide to come out with the Ring Finder book?
You know, I've been thinking about writing this book for quite a few years. I've been Ring Finder like 8 or 9 years now, and I've been thinking about writing it all along. And people are so amazed that this is even a part of our hobby. Especially people will find me online and hire me to go find their lost ring. And the very first thing they always say is, "I had no idea this even existed." And the more I heard that, I realized I should really write a book about it.
Well, that sounds great. And then, of course, it says how to make a profit with your metal detector. So can you give us just one story without giving the whole book away of like some of your rings that you found?
Absolutely. And it's just not rings like it's focused on ring finding, but as you guys know, it's also about finding people's jewelry. Sometimes it's cell phones, keys. It's just that process of what you would go through to for beginners. They can buy the book to find out in a few chapters on, what detector you should buy, how to learn your detector, and everything about it. And then for a lot of the seasoned detectorists, the process of going out there and doing that. And one story in particular, we call it Diamond in the Rough, was a lady. She was on a pretty high-end golf course and lost her ball into the woods in between the two greens. And when she went in there, just a branch off a tree hit her ear, and it pulled off a diamond that she was wearing on her ears. The set was worth $60,000.
Wow.
And yeah. And I mean, I got to tell you, I didn't know people wore earrings that were worth $60,000, but they do. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a crazy story, Steve. Now, if somebody buys this book, what are the one or two things that you would like for them to take away from reading this book?
I think that there's a lot of people out there that are interested in this, and the book does, state, hey, listen, you can go and make a profit with your detector to do that. But if you're the type of person that would just like to go out there and find something out of the goodness for your heart, this book is also going to give you the step-by-step process on what to do, how to do that, how to interact with the people before you meet them, everything to do online to get attention towards yourself, and to just walk through it properly, step by step, right up to the point where you receive your gratuity or your thank you. And as all of you know, I've done a lot of this throughout Canada, the United States, the Caribbean, and Europe. So I've just taken all of my experience throughout the years and I put it into that book. It's not a super long book either, and I did that on purpose because people don't really want to sit down and read for hours and hours and hours and days on end. They want to get a book. They can get right to the point of the process, and that's what I've done here. I kind of wrote it as if I wanted to buy it, and it's like, don't just get rid of all the garbage. I just want to really know exactly what I need to know to do this and how I can be successful at it.
Now, you've been very successful at it, and you're part of an organization called Ring Finders, and we've seen some of your posts where you have found some amazing rings and other relics. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other things you found besides rings, maybe some of the jewelry and some of the other items that you found?
Yeah, and it's interesting. People lose everything from obviously rings and heirlooms and chains and drones. That's another thing. People call me up. People will they'll buy a drone and it'll get lost somewhere out in the water or something, and they have insurance on it, but you can't get the insurance unless you physically have the drone. So I'll go diving for those, or I'll go off into the woods looking for people's cell phones, especially this generation. People lose cell phones everywhere. So I know one young girl last year, she was out horseback riding and her cell phone had fallen out of the back of her pocket and it wasn't backed up, and she was just fit to be tied, and it was lost in a field. The grass had to be at least 3 feet high. And I gridded it in the book. I talk about search patterns, how to grid areas. One of the search patterns is called the Dorothy. And you just basically start at the center of where you think it was lost, and you start going in a circle, and just like starting off on the yellow brick road. And there's different search patterns and techniques in that book that'll really, really help people out.
A lot of times if somebody loses something like that, they have somebody with a metal detector come and look for it, they don't absolutely know the search patterns that you should take. And I mean, that's a good part of your book. I mean, of course, you could do that with like in a Civil War campsite, or you can do that elsewhere. And of course, just doing your circle patterns or the other patterns that you're going to speak about in your book. That's a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, and I actually have friends in law enforcement and in the military that I spoke to over the last year. Just as you know, they in their searches have search patterns that they use, and I actually incorporated some of those search patterns into the book.
And not to give too much away, but you've been doing this a long time. I have no idea how many rings that you have found over your career. And you might address that. You might want to speak about that in a moment. But also, what mistakes do you see beginners make whenever they're going out and try to find a lost item that someone has lost, and then they've enlisted their help with a metal detector? What mistakes do they make, and how have you addressed that in the book?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this is what I see a lot is, as you guys know, the way you kind of work with a I'll call them a client is really important. The way you present yourself, the way you talk to them, before you meet them, the way you arrive is really key on showing yourself as a professional. And that's really what is paramount for me. Is when I speak to anybody, when I show up, I give them my card. I have a card made up. So as soon as I arrive, they're like, okay, this guy's a professional. He knows what he's doing, and my level of trust has gone up. And this is one of the really important things that I suggest for people to do. And I've got that all written in the book on how you arrive, and all my suggestions on what to do. And then again, using the detector and reading the area. I've got a whole chapter on how to read the area so you're not wasting your time. You could show up to a ring find late in the evening and you don't have a lot of light left. Well, I've got certain techniques that you would go implement right away when you're short on time, that you'd be able to find that ring very quickly.
And it depends on how long that an item has been lost. But you'll change the settings probably on your detector depending on, whether that item has had time to get down in the ground or whether it's just going to be a surface find. Is that right?
You haven't read the book, right? I love that you just answered. Yeah. I love that you just asked that.
No, I've got
I have a technique, Loy, that is amazing when it comes to that. It's amazing, and anybody can do it, right? Beginner, seasoned detectorists, and it's very easy. But when you read the book and you see this one technique, if you read the book, you'll know exactly what we're talking about here. It has allowed me to show up to ring finds. You guys can see on my YouTube videos. I do a lot of YouTube videos and Facebook videos, so people can see, like, this is legitimate. This is real. I'm really doing it. I do live recoveries, and you'll see the people when I give them back the ring. All this is really important, and you'll see videos there where I'll show up and I'll find the ring within the first 2 minutes of arriving. And it's all of these techniques I put in the book. I have not held back. I can say on a stack of Bibles, I have not held back on any of the tips, the tricks and techniques that I use in this book.
Have you noticed, is it a lot easier to find a ring in the water or on land?
Definitely on land, especially if there's a chapter in there on actually talking to the individual who's lost it, and there's a sequence of questions that I go through, and typically when I get to the last question, I have the full story of what's happened, where I believe the ring is, and I start from there. And typically on land, it's a lot easier. However, I've got a whole chapter in there on finding rings in water, even a bit on dive detecting in there, which people were really surprised at. I really tried to cover the whole gamut. If you get the book, you would really be a well-rounded ring finder by the time you got through the whole book. Like, you'd be able to search on land, beach, in the water, dive, the whole bit.
I'm a relatively new detector as compared to a lot of people, and I really wish I had your book 2 years ago, and I've done a couple of ring finds. But one of the things that I learned is asking a lot of questions, and I know that you address that in the book. Now, Jeff asked you about finding, in the water versus on land, but you actually found some rings in the snow, which I would think would be extremely difficult. How did you go about determining where you would start to detecting in the snow, and how did you actually find it?
Yeah, I actually talk about this in the book. Like, for example, I had one young lady who had lost her engagement ring, and the engagement ring was a VV1 diamond. It was worth $47,000, and she had lost it on the side of her driveway in the snow. And again, I walked through the whole process. There's these really, really specific questions that I've learned and found that are very successful that I ask the individual when I arrive. And I went through those, and I realized after she had spoken to me that the ring wasn't there. And I had kind of found out that she'd been somewhere earlier that day, and she said, "There's no way it's at that driveway." And I said, "Let's go over." And when we went over, I used a specific search pattern for the snow, and I found it within 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great story. I actually did one time where I started asking a lot of questions, and in the middle of asking the questions, I guess I triggered this person's memory, and she said, "Oh, hold on a minute." She went back into her house and realized that it was in the pants pocket of another pair of pants that she'd forgotten to look in.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Mark, because those questions that I have in the book are directed to really, really spark a person's memory. And then I also have a couple other things that I ask them to do with the individual, and it really, really helps and eliminates so much time to finding the ring. And over the years, I've become very successful at it because of that. And I would say over 90% of the ring finds that I go out to, I'm successful on.
It was a time a good friend of mine called me, and he said that his fiance had lost her engagement ring. So I went out, and come to find out, of course, they'd had a little argument the night before, and I was like, "Well, where do you think your ring is?" And then she's like, "Well, I threw it over that way and towards this little building." And of course, the yard was littered with trash. And then, of course, I was like, "Well, how mad were you? Were you baseball throwing mad, or were you just tossing mad?" So she took one of her rings off, and that she still had on her finger, and she kind of pitched it. And sure enough, it landed about 2 foot away from her engagement ring. So
that's incredible that she had actually take another ring and throw it away.
That's what I was thinking, and I was like, "Well, this is not going to be as easy as you think." I mean, this is a lot of trash in there. And of course, you go through the discriminate everything out and try to find just the ring signal. So,
yeah, I really wrote the book so even someone who doesn't detect can buy the book and go through the entire book to really learn about detectors and what they should have, and what they need to do when they get started. And then I also say, in the book, you can skip this chapter if you already got a detector and you're a well-seasoned detectorist, and go right to this one, because this is going to be directed to you. And so far, I've had amazing response with the book. People have I've got some people out here that have pre-read it. I got a great review from, I don't know if you know who Michelle Myers is. She's the global sales marketer for MindLab. And you can see all that stuff on my website. My website is Zazulyk.com, or you can just put in the ringfinderbook.com and it'll take you to the same website. And even the Aqua Chigger, has got something in there for me.
Wow, that's pretty neat. How many rings have you found for people over the years? Do you have an idea?
Like a total amount of rings that I have found?
Yes.
Over 500, probably.
Can you imagine? 7?
I'll tell you what, that is something else. And Steve, I've got links already on 2 or 3 of my pages, Amazon links to your book that can be pre-ordered. A lot of people are going to look at that maybe and say, well, I don't know that ring finding is what I want to do. But don't you think that a lot of the principles that you're going to cover in this book are going to translate into other types of metal detecting?
Oh, 100%. 100%. If you are a Civil War relic hunter, there is the information. It's whether it's a ring or it's a breastplate or whatever you're looking for. This book will give you everything that you need to know about locating that item, in my opinion.
Now, did you include a chapter on those things that you found that nobody knows about?
Yes.
You think I've read the book, don't you?
I do. Yeah, what I did is I was very fortunate. I've always been a bit of a photographer, and I really like really good pictures. My daughter, Natalie, is a professional photographer, and coincidentally, she did the cover of the book. She took that picture of me, and I've always taken pictures and done video of all my finds ever since I started. And it was really beneficial when it was time to write this book, because I thought, I've seen a lot of the other metal detecting books that are out by people, and a lot of them don't have some very good, photography in it, or it's just like, some of them are just like black and white typed print. And I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting for people when they're going along. So I've actually got a picture of that $30,000 diamond earring in that book. I've got the picture of the girl with the $47,000 diamond ring in the book. So it just kind of makes it a little exciting for people to read along, get the instruction that they need, find out, some really, really good tips, and then see some nice pictures. And then also I hired an artist to do diagrams in the book. So they're actually, they were all from my direction, and this artist did a great job of the search patterns and some other really nice diagrams over there of the detectors. And I don't think that's there's a diagram in there of dive detecting, and as you guys know, I coined that phrase dive detecting some years ago, and I think it's the first time it's ever been in a book. So I'm pretty proud of that too.
Hey, Steve, you've got an amazing amount of information in that book based on what you're telling us now. I can't wait to read it. I was just thinking, you're part of an organization called Ring Finders. You might want to talk a little bit about that. But what I was thinking is, the Ring Finders organization should actually promote your book or make it actually required reading to become a ring finder, to understand how to be a successful ring finder. I would think there'd be a great association with that organization.
Yeah, I actually am good friends with Chris Turner. He's the owner of Ring Finders, and they're actually going to make it available for the people on Ring Finders when they come on to Ring Finders. The book isn't totally directed at the Ring Finders Association or strictly. I am a part of Ring Finders, and I think it's great. It's an excellent organization. Chris Turner has really, there's been, I think, over 5,000 rings returned because of that organization. So I give them kudos whenever I can. But I also know, some people aren't involved with Ring Finders. So the book gives you the option of advertising online, and I give multiple ideas on how to do that outside of Ring Finders. And then, of course, I suggest to people, if you want to join the organization and be a part of that site, you can do that too. It's up to you. But I really focus the book on actual ring finding. So and you can do whatever you want. And again, just like Loy said, it doesn't have to be rings. It can be whatever you're looking for. There's some really, really good information in this book. And again, I purposely made it so it wasn't a big, thick book. I wanted it so, you could throw in your, in your pack. And then if you're on a, going, out some weekend and you want a nice read over the weekend, or one evening you want to sit down and just have a coffee and just have a nice read, it's the perfect book to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know because they don't have their the next issue of American Digger magazine. But you have just completed an article that is published in this issue on magnet fishing. And by the way, we're probably going to reach out to you sometime in August to be on the writer spotlight on that article. Great article. I've already read it. But do you deal with any of that in the book?
Magnet fishing?
Yeah.
That's my next book, Loy. I'm writing it right now.
You're looking at me and you're saying he's got ESPN.
Yeah, I think you're reading my mail.
I'm thinking y'all are in the same room together.
He's on the boat with me right now. And by the way, when we close this show, my son-in-law dropped the grill off the back of the houseboat, so I need for you to take a magnet and pick that thing up for me and bring it back up.
I'm so happy you like that article. I really respect you, Loy. I know that your background is in publishing and writing, and I really appreciate that. I'm really glad you like that article on magnet fishing.
I just thought the whole way that you went through it, and I don't want to take anything away from Relic Roundup and the show that we're obviously going to do sometime probably in August. And the only reason that I say August, I don't want to run you back to back on two shows. But I like the way that that you go through the history and the how-to, and it's just a full, well-rounded article on magnet fishing. And, a lot of people are getting into that. So that'll be another great book.
Oh, it's excellent. Magnet fishing is amazing. Yeah. So, I'm in the process of writing that book right now. So hopefully we can talk about that in the future. Yeah. And I hope people get that article or get the book. Go get the magazine, American Digger. It's awesome. And then I also, as you know, have my own column in that book called Below the Surface. Right.
Yeah. Me and you are colleagues there at American Digger.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
And you do a great job with it too. And it was good that Butch and Anita reached out to you and brought you on as a columnist, because that's an area that needed more exposure, than it was getting. And they picked a great person for it, no doubt about it. I tell you what, you've been a great guest, hadn't he, Mark, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, yeah. I can't wait to read the book. It's going to be a great book, and I believe everyone. It doesn't matter if you've started metal detecting yesterday or you've been metal detecting for 150 years like Loy. You're going to learn something from this book.
Boy, I thought we were going to get through a whole podcast without anybody saying that, Lloyd.
Oh, they're tearing me up in chat already. So I deal with that all the time. So,
Well, Lloyd, you got to just remember, you're like a good wine. It gets better with age.
There you go. Yeah. Well seasoned, I am, I tell you. But you have been a great guest, and we thank you for taking out time on July the 4th. Of course, you guys celebrated on July the 1st there in Canada. And, but we're celebrating our independence here on, July the 4th. And I will let, Mark and Jeff, have their final comments here, and then we'll close this shortened show out.
Yeah, this is Mark. And so, Steve, we really want to thank you for coming on today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. It's been an amazing adventure watching you and your videos and all of the people that you have helped in finding their rings and their jewelry. It's just been an absolute delight to get to know you, and I can't wait to read the book. And of course, when I get a copy of it, I want to make sure mine is autographed, and look forward to reading that, Steve. So thanks for being on today.
Yeah, Steve, I just wanted to tell you what Mark said. I can't wait to get the book, and hopefully it is autographed, and I can't wait to hunt with you sometime. Of course, I see a lot of years of ventures as you go out, and I mean, it looks like you have a great time every time you go out, and we really appreciate you being on our show tonight. And of course, I'm thinking to go back out here. I heard a firework go off, and I heard a kid start crying. So I don't think that was good. So, but we really thank you for being on the show tonight, Steve. And can't wait to see your book.
Yeah, we do. And and thanks to all of our live listeners on the Spreaker app tonight, and also all of our syndicated listeners on the Cutting Edge Radio Network. Hope all of you guys are having a wonderful 4th of July. And for those of you that will catch this show after the 4th of July, we hope that you had a enjoyable time with your family, and that you had a safe trip home, and hope that America remains free for ages and ages to come. And appreciate everybody that came in. And by the way, guys, we're going to be giving away another giveaway, a good giveaway on August the 1st. We're going to have a special guest. Not going to tell you who that guest is, and we're not going to tell you what the item is, but you keep watching RELICS Radio Facebook group page, and you will see that, those announcements coming up. And also, the cooling towels. It's hot, ain't it, Mark? We need those cooling towels everywhere.
Yeah, I'm getting a really good response on those now that we have those RELICS Radio cooling towels. Some people have already started using them, and it's getting over 100 degrees in a lot of places, and you really need something like that to keep yourself cool while you're out hunting. So really excited that we've gotten those in now.
Yesterday I was out mowing the grass, and the heat index was in triple digits, and I just soaked mine with some water and put it around my neck, and it was a lifesaver. So you really need to get one if you don't have one.
Yep. Okay, guys, we appreciate you being on tonight. Have a great 4th.